film is going to be Best Picture. So I really wanted to be on par for this.
This is great. You are clearly a professional. You make me feel very homesick for Rome.
Oh, well, absolutely. Who isn't homesick for Rome, right? It's an amazing city, the eternal city, as they say.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure to meet with you today. Congratulations on the film. I mean, you've had quite the career, Emmys, Tonys, and now Oscar buzz for your supporting role in what's up to be the best picture of the year, contender-wise. How are you
Mhm.
feeling?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that there was any buzz about me. Uh, I'll try to contain my excitement on the subject. No, it's wonderful. I mean, even without an awards season and awards buzz, this would have been a perfectly marvelous experience. We're all so proud of the film and so delighted that it's having this impact, though not surprised. I mean, we knew we were in something great. Edward is a visionary filmmaker. We found out halfway through our shooting period that All Quiet on the Western Front had like swept up at the BAFTAs and heading for the Oscars. Yes, he had won. He also won Best Foreign Language Picture while we were shooting this. So it was, man, when we got that news, we sort of stood up a little straighter and thought, wow, we may just be in something really grand here. And it, and as much as we felt and thought it was going to be something special, I saw the film and I was amazed. It was so compelling, so suspenseful. You really cared and you understood and followed the storyline of every single one of these complicated characters and the way it was their stories intermingled. It started with Robert Harris's wonderful novel, but he so respected and adjusted and adapted that novel for film so impeccably. It reminded me of movie making years ago, like David Lean movie making or A Man for All Seasons movie making. Just engrossing stories about lofty subjects that are given this wonderful grounding in human behavior and character. We all just had that sense of it. And I flatter myself I was in the company of a fantastic ensemble of actors, not just the headliners, but the cast. The dramatis personae was very, very deep. The College of Cardinals is a big international group. And along with his casting director, Nina Gold, Edward scoured the world for the best actors in about 40 different countries. So I was working alongside of actors I'd never heard of, but where they came from, they were more famous than any of us. And some of them playing very small roles. It was, you just knew you were in a kind of pantheon. And I feel I owe it to them to rattle off a few of their names: Jacek Koman, uh, Mirab Nanitsi, Lucian Samati, Brian O'Byrne, uh, Thomas Loibel. These were some of these actors were like the major leading actors in their national theater company, employed for life and allowed occasionally to go off and make a movie. It's
That
pretty great to work with them.
No, it's incredible. And Edward Berger, he's known for creating that tense atmosphere. I wonder what it was like. Can you talk a little bit about the atmosphere on set with all of that talent, with Edward Berger directing it? Talk a little bit about the atmosphere and the energy on set.
Well, there was a great trust in Edward, and a great trust in each other. You just knew you were working with marvelous people. There's an actor that I have left out, Sergio Castellitto, who's a very well-known Italian character man, very flamboyant, Tedesco. You had the feeling, oh my God, this guy is way too big for movies. He's too operatic by half. But boy, is he fun to watch. And then you see the movie and he is pitch perfect. Uh, it was just thrilling. Just I so often if you're acting in a cast of big time actors, you know them pretty well. Well, this was a cast of big time actors who were all brand new to me and wonderful people. I mean, just I took away so many great friendships.
Yeah, and you play, this is the first time that you've played ever since, you played a priest once before or a preacher once before, but now you play a cardinal in the Catholic Church. So, that it's steeped in tradition and power.
Mhm.
How did you approach playing that role?
Well, the most interesting aspect of playing the role was his humanity. Well, both the good and bad aspects of his humanness. Yes, they were popes, they were cardinals in their finery, enacting all their holy rituals, but they were. But the most interesting thing about them was what happens when they step off the stage. Among my favorite scenes were the scenes that took place in the cafeteria. You know, these guys are in conclave. They're sequestered from the rest of the world and they're not allowed to communicate with the rest of the world. And yet they have to eat. So they all eat in a great big cafeteria, just like the student body of a high school. I just think that's fantastic. And something that Edward was fascinating with the tension between the sacred show and the sort of gritty, down to earth behavior of men, tribal men, you know.
No, very much so. And the conclave itself is kind of like a melting pot, as you alluded to
Yeah.
earlier, of cultures from around the world. And each time you came together for dinner, it was kind of like a potluck dinner. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, John, if you were representing and you were in the conclave for real, what dish would you bring to that Pope potluck dinner?
Well, Tremblay was a Canadian, kind of Quebecois, and yet he was not a French Canadian. But he hung out with his Canadian friends. They all sat in different cliques, but they all had to eat the same food. So I had a great fondness for a certain scene that did not survive. It didn't end up in the film, but the only reason why I missed it was it showed that it told the little fact that Tremblay was Canadian, which to me was kind of key to his character in many ways. Uh, and also that he was sociable, political, and had a sense of humor. I told a joke in French to my French Canadian colleagues. And the joke, I'm not going to repeat it in French, but it said, God, why did you give such luxuries to the Canadians, these beautiful mountains, these rivers? And God says, no, 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 not at all. Just wait until you see the neighbors I've given them. And they all roar with laughter at this anti-American joke. Aha, attendez de voir, les voisins. We all roared with laughter. I loved the fact that you saw Tremblay telling a joke. It showed how he was kind of like a Clinton-esque politician. He really knew how to charm people. And that's one note that did not get sounded, which I sort of regret. I'm speaking out of school. I shouldn't reveal such things, but it's something I sure enjoyed.
No, and
And
we live for those moments that don't make it
yeah,
on screen because that actually is a funny joke and it actually makes a lot of sense when you look at the metaphors that are kind of in the screenplay itself and what Tremblay kind of represents as we parallel and we look at our world in which we live today.
yeah,
So it's very, very interesting. And I thank you so
yeah,
much for sharing those tips. Were
yeah.
there any other moments, maybe wardrobe malfunctions with those robes or any other funny moments on set that you
Oh,
could
the
share?
the funniest moment, you have probably heard about it from Stanley. He loves telling this story.
No,
And
tell me. I don't think you told me.
I'm not even sure we should tell it, but we
Oh,
can't
come on,
resist.
man. I won't tell, I
We
promise.
can't resist. Among the very first scenes of the film, we are the scene in which all of us are introduced. We're all kneeling around the dead body of the late Pope. and intoning Latin. It's, it's a very heavy scene. I do believe music is playing and candles are burning. Well, they had a splendid looking extra playing the dead Pope. He looked like he was about 120 years old. And he lay there, and we prayed, and we over sort of folded hands, and he would snore, and he would burp, and he would fart, and his feet would twitch, and we would do everything we could to hold back our giggles. And if you look carefully, we did what we could to transmute that into sort of holy behavior.
Oh my God, that's a great story. I mean, that is so great. And there is so much faith that's intertwined here. It's faith in humanity, faith in people, faith in your brethren. How did, playing this role, how did your views on your personal faith, whether it's religious, organized religion, or in humanity, how did they shift going in and coming out of this project?
I don't really think they changed. I've never really been a religious person in any formal religion. I have had an interesting life. Both my parents were from highly religious families. In fact, my grandfather whom I never knew. He had passed before I had a chance to know him. He was a very eminent Baptist preacher in Rochester, New York. And my dad's family were congregational churchgoers in Boston every single Sunday of their lives. Both my parents were kind of black sheep and led this crazy life. It was a theater family. We gypsied around. I lived in 8 different places, and that was 8 different religious cultures. And I would sort of join in, just like the Methodist Youth Fellowship or the congregational choir or the Unitarian Youth Church group in Akron, Ohio. I would just join in to fit in. You don't end up a very seriously religious person after that childhood, when you feel like you're just putting on new clothes for every new religion. But I've grown up, I believe, with my own morality and sense of right and wrong, which I try to live up to, and I don't always. And I feel good old Catholic guilt when I transgress. So I deeply understand it. I'm a sort of a freak on the subject of art history. I'm a museum goer every chance I get. I loved being in Rome. And you are so immersed in Italian Renaissance Catholic art. Uh, I completely understand what religion meant to those painters. Otherwise, they couldn't have painted with such extraordinary expressiveness. So, it gets all mixed up. I spend my entire life trying to understand other people in order to play parts. And I do that with religion too.
No, absolutely. And I think all of that culture kind of helps, and it's helped in your career in all of your
Yeah.
roles because you've had such a diverse career. And I think that's all helped you kind of show up and, represent that culture in which you're portraying at that
Yeah.
time.
Well,
So,
that's what I do. And that's what fascinates me about acting and playing other parts. I'm sort of in the empathy business.
yeah, and they are empathy machines, correct?
Yeah.
And if you were secretly casting your vote, for the next pope, I'm curious, which qualities would you prioritize in a leader? Whether it's in real life or your character, which qualities would you prioritize?
I think courage and kindness. Uh, I just standing up to cruelty and bullying in the world, bullying writ large. Uh, I think that would define it. And
Awesome.
I think that's the story of Conclave too.
Yeah. And if there was one thing that you want audiences, global audiences, to take away from Edward Berger's Conclave, what would it be?
I just think it's a I think it's a deep, deep, deeply entertaining film. But it's also it's wonderful when a film that entertaining is that provocative, uh, emotionally and spiritually. Just makes you think and makes you feel. That's I think what we all aspire to is having a tremendous emotional impact on people. And a lot of that has to do with just following an incredible story.
That's very true. What's next for you, John?
Well, I just on Saturday, this past Saturday night, I closed a 7-week run of an extraordinary new play in London called Giant,
Oh,
by Mark Rosenblatt, about Roald Dahl. And I play the title role of Roald Dahl. And it was such a huge success that it's going to the West End, and I'll reprise the role in April
wow.
for about 13 weeks.
So back to the stage?
Back to the stage. I go periodically, and it's been about 4 years, so it was high time.
Do you prefer the stage or do you prefer the screen? Or do you have a preference or do you think they kind of
I
work
love
together?
them both for very, very different reasons. I do think on stage it is really at the heart of what I do. I mean, I'm in the same room with the audience and experience. I have the experience of telling a story at the same time they have the experience of receiving it, and that's at the heart of the matter. Which is not to say I mean, I just love the whole mechanics of movies, but when it comes to actually acting full out and playing an entire scene straight to finish, start to finish, and then playing an entire evening start to finish. I mean, that's really what acting is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you, Landon.
Congratulations again on the Oscar buzz. Variety has named you an Oscar buzz for predictions for supporting actor. So congratulations, John.
Honest to God, I have not heard that.
Well, I'm
I
so glad to be the first one to tell you because you've
oh,
earned it. And we are so glad. And we will see you at the Oscars.
thank you, Landon. Well, I'm sure the film is going to do great, so I would love to be there to represent it one way or the other.
We sure hope you are. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for everything, John. Have a
Of
wonderful
course,
rest of your day.
Landon. And nobody has had a better set design than you, I have to tell
Oh, well, I will
you.
take that. I'm going to put that on my resume. I'm going to
Okay.
quote you on that, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Bye
again.
bye.